Welcome, dear listeners, to another chilling episode of our scary stories. As the moon takes over the sky and the shadows grow longer, we invite you to join us on a journey to the very edges of your reality. I'm your host, and tonight I'll guide you through a tale of spectral voices, cosmic ciphers, and a late-night radio host who found himself at the crossroads of existence. So, dim your lights, take a deep breath, and let the haunting tune of our tale fill the silence of your room. Are you ready? Let's venture into the unsettling world of dead air. John Harmon, a grizzled veteran of the airwaves, began another evening on his radio show, Voices in the Dark. The studio was drenched in a nocturnal ambience, cloaked in a web of shadows, with only a few pools of harsh light from desk lamps disrupting the gloom. The late hour veiled the world outside the glass panes in an impenetrable obsidian canvas, the town's twinkling lights but distant constellations. Surrounded by familiar smells of hot circuitry and well-worn upholstery, John eased into his chair. The cool fabric against his skin was a tactile reminder of the many hours spent behind the microphone, delving into stories of the paranormal. The clatter of rain against the window punctuated the buzz of the standby equipment, the melody of his nightly ritual. His first caller, a voice like rustling autumn leaves, spoke tentatively. "I'm Alex," he said. "I died in a car crash on Valley Road 6 years ago." The lines crinkled with static as if straining under the weight of the clay. John's stomach clenched, not out of fear, but surprise. The audacity of some listeners never ceased to amaze him. "You're dead. Why the late call, Alex?" "I'd imagine the afterlife keeps one pretty busy," John replied, a note of wry amusement tinging his voice. His sarcastic response, amplified and broadcasted, hung in the studio like a mocking specter. However, Alex continued, undeterred. He described his death in unnerving detail, the icy rain on the windshield, the horrific lurch of the vehicle skidding, the blinding lights of the oncoming truck, the scent of burnt rubber, and the nauseating taste of fear. John felt the usual cynicism waver. The story was delivered with a chilling intensity, an authenticity that began to prick at his skepticism. He could almost feel the torrential rain described by Alex on his skin, the icy grip of fear taking hold of his heart. Yet he shook it off. It was late, and fatigue could play tricks on the most rational mind. As he bid his caller goodbye and moved on to the next, he glanced outside at the rain. A sliver of unease slipped past his rational barriers, a subconscious acknowledgement of something he couldn't fully understand. Little did he know, this was merely the preamble to the symphony of the supernatural about to envelop him. He turned his gaze back to the microphone, the night's saga just beginning, and the thin veil between the living and the dead trembling on the precipice of his disbelief. As the days unfolded, a pattern emerged on John's show. He found himself in the same chair, under the same weak lamplight, receiving calls from voices claiming to have broken free from the shackles of death. Each account, delivered with unnerving calm, was a chilling echo from the other side. One call came from a woman named Sarah, who whispered tales of her life in the town during its nascent years, of long-forgotten landmarks, and people whose names had been swallowed by time. The room felt cold as she described her last moments, a deadly flu, the world fading away from her bedridden form. Another call came from a man named Peter, a former miner, his voice gritty like gravel. He told stories of a mine collapse in the town's outskirts, an event lost in the annals of history. John could almost taste the dust, feel the oppressive darkness of the mine Peter described with startling clarity. John began to record these calls, intrigued despite his initial disbelief. He reeled from the flood of details, the intimate knowledge of the town's buried past, and the raw emotion that seemed to seep through the phone line. His once cozy studio, with its familiar smells of coffee and ink, started to feel heavy, tinged with an aura of morbid fascination. Outside his studio, the town remained its ordinary self, blissfully unaware of the spectral echoes reverberating through the late-night airwaves. Streetlights cast long, dancing shadows, the occasional hooting of owls punctuating the still night. Yet, within the studio's confines, a different realm seemed to be taking shape, one where the barrier between life and death was porous, disturbingly malleable. John found himself frequently gazing out the window, his reflection staring back at him, a silent observer of the uncanny drama unfolding. His initial skepticism was gradually chipping away, replaced by a knot of apprehension and curiosity in his chest. The spectral voices, the ghost line, had started as a mere anomaly, a curious hiccup in his routine late-night show. Yet, as days turned into weeks, John was beginning to understand it as something else entirely. A silent cry for help from the beyond, a harbinger of an unknown mystery waiting to be unraveled. Weeks passed. The studio, once just a cocoon of familiarity, now pulsated with an invisible current of uncertainty and chilling fascination. The air felt denser, harder to breathe, as if each call from the departed added another layer of fog. John had become the reluctant conduit between realms, his skepticism crumbling like sandcastles against the ceaseless tide of eerie calls. The voices spoke with aching urgency, their tales growing darker, weaving into an impossible narrative. One call stood out among the rest, a scientist named Benjamin who claimed to have died in a forgotten laboratory accident decades ago. He spoke in the language of quantum physics, of parallel universes, and dimensions existing in proximity, separated by a cosmic veil. The veil is tearing, he said, his voice shuddering over the line. John felt a chill creep up his spine, the smell of static electricity mingling with his brewing coffee. Through the murky glass window, the town slept oblivious under a blanket of fog. Inside the studio, each new call formed ripples in the stagnant air, the pungent aroma of fear creeping along the edges. Benjamin's cryptic words echoed in John's ears, opening the door to an even more immense unknown. Hints of despair tainted each of the ghostly voices. The dead were reaching out, not just to tell their stories, but to send warnings. The cosmic tear Benjamin had spoken about was widening, causing a commotion in the spirit world, a breach that was growing, throbbing like an open wound. The implications sent a chill down John's spine, his clammy hands clutching the warm mug of coffee. He looked out at the hazy town, the dull lights flickering as if trying to ward off the encroaching fog. His once mundane late-night show had spiraled into a mystery beyond comprehension, a cryptic puzzle with pieces that didn't fit. John's mind buzzed with confusion and fear, the radio crackling with the whispers of the dead. An uneasy feeling settled in the pit of his stomach, the smell of dread thick in the air. Yet, amid the chatter of anxiety, a spark of determination flickered. He decided he would attempt to solve this unearthly mystery for his town, his listeners, and the restless souls reaching out for his help. The puzzle pieces might not fit yet, but he was resolved to find a way to make them. John found himself navigating a sea of uncertainty. Each morning, after the ghostly echoes of his show had faded, he sought solace in the comforting normality of daylight. He turned to his contacts, fellow hosts and experts in the field of the unexplainable. Each conversation felt like clutching at straws, a desperate attempt to make sense of the senseless. His friend and longtime paranormal investigator, Rachel, was his first call. Her reaction, a mix of excitement and skepticism, did little to settle his growing unease. "John, these stories you're getting, they're incredible," she said, her voice crackling with fascination over the phone. "But we need to ensure it's not some coordinated hoax." His former college roommate, Marcus, now a renowned psychologist, provided a different perspective. "Could be a case of shared delusion," he suggested, his analytical tone offering no comfort to John's disturbed mind. Yet he could almost smell the dusty pages of Marcus's psychology books, the faint hum of his skepticism filtering through the phone line. Each conversation left John more restless, caught in a whirlpool of conflicted emotions. The studio was still a few hours from embracing its nocturnal persona, yet the anticipation of the upcoming show stirred his senses. The scent of evening jasmine wafted through the slightly ajar window, mingling with the lingering traces of cold coffee. The night brought its cloak of darkness, shadows nestling in every corner of the town. The same studio, which had welcomed countless stories of the unexplained, now stood as a threshold between the realms of the living and the dead. As John sat in his familiar chair, the cool leather offering little comfort, he couldn't help but feel a shiver of apprehension. Despite the advice and theories, the eerie calls were as real to John as the microphone in front of him. As he started another night, another chapter in this bizarre saga, he realized his position. He was a lighthouse keeper in a storm, the lone sentinel between his town and the chaos brewing on the other side of reality. Fear and skepticism took a backseat as he tuned into another frequency, bracing himself for the next wave of ghostly revelations. The calls escalated in intensity, taking on an alarming urgency. Each voice from the beyond painted a haunting picture of a spiritual maelstrom, a byproduct of the tear in the cosmic fabric Benjamin had spoken of. One caller, a former priest named Albert, spoke of divine retribution. Another, an innocent child named Lily, wept about the big, scary rip in the sky. The studio had become an amphitheater of spectral voices. The crackle of the radio and the whispers from beyond filled the room, the chill of their words hanging in the air, tainting the aroma of his late-night coffee. Yet, outside his soundproofed sanctuary, the town slumbered peacefully. The contrast was jarring, his sanctuary swirling with the echoes of the restless dead, while the world outside remained oblivious. Determined, John delved deeper. He combed through historical records, researched forgotten accidents, and confirmed the reality of each caller's life and death. The effort was grueling, the constant oscillation between the cold facts of history and the chilling tales from the other side. But every verification, every aligning fact, bolstered his belief and resolve. He could taste the metallic tang of fear on his tongue, feel the prickle of hair-raising dread. Yet he pressed on. The implications of the tear, the unseen cataclysm affecting the spiritual world, sent shivers down his spine. The aroma of burnt circuits and stale coffee grew stronger as he pieced together the unfolding narrative. A ghostly SOS transmitted through the conduit of his show. John Harmon, the late-night host, had a new role. He was no longer just a storyteller, but a reluctant soldier in a battle he could barely comprehend. As the whispers from the other side grew louder, he realized that his show was the only beacon of hope for the tormented souls reaching out from beyond the veil. Despite the chilling encounters with the beyond, a pattern began to emerge amidst the ethereal chaos. John realized the calls were not random echoes of the dead, but messages, coded pleas sent across the chasm separating life and death. He listened with renewed focus, trying to decipher the common threads weaving through the stories from the other side. From each call, John extracted fragments of information, transcribing words and phrases that were repeated like tear, rift, veil, chaos, darkness. His studio became a command center, papers strewn everywhere, the smell of ink and brewing coffee permeating the room. John's world contracted to the four walls of the studio, the town outside becoming a backdrop to his solitary investigation. He could smell the onset of rain, hear the distant rumble of thunder, but his senses were attuned to the ghostly echoes more than the real world. One night, the cryptic messages took a terrifyingly clear form. A woman, introducing herself as Margaret, a former codebreaker during the World War, came on the line. Her voice, trembling yet determined, told her story. "There's a way to mend the tear," she whispered. "I've seen the pattern in the chaos. There's a sequence, a code." The rest of Margaret's call was filled with cryptic phrases, symbols, and numbers. John quickly jotted down everything, the pencil scratching on the paper becoming the only real sound amidst the phantom callers. Margaret's clues were obscure, her references filled with wartime cryptography jargon, but John felt the first stirring of hope. His studio was filled with the smell of old papers and fresh ink, the once mundane late-night show having morphed into a cryptic rescue mission. The task at hand was daunting, the coded messages a riddle wrapped in a mystery. But for the first time since the ghostly calls began, John had a tangible lead, a thread of possibility that he clung to. The voices from the other side weren't just victims of the cosmic tear. They were allies in this invisible war, and together they might just have a chance to mend the rift between realms. Armed with Margaret's cryptic leads, John threw himself into decoding the message from the beyond. His studio transformed into a cryptographer's war room, a chaotic collage of scribbled notes, printouts, and reference books. The once familiar smell of coffee was now suffused with the aroma of dusty books and worn-out pencils. John reached out to Rachel again, seeking her expertise in paranormal symbols and codes. Together, they spent countless hours analyzing Margaret's clues. The air was thick with anticipation, the tension tangible enough to taste. They replayed the eerie recordings, dove deep into forgotten cryptology literature, and dissected each symbol and number Margaret had whispered. Their dedication bore fruit in the form of a sequence, a cipher born from the haunting pleas. A mix of numbers and ancient symbols, it was unlike anything John or Rachel had ever seen. Yet there was an undeniable sense of rightness about it, as if they had stumbled onto a cosmic key. Through his studio window, the world moved on, oblivious to the spiritual storm brewing. The contrast between the peaceful town and his chaos-infused studio was jarring. The hushed whispers of late-night callers, the musty scent of old books, the tension-coated silence, all felt increasingly surreal against the backdrop of the sleepy town. But within the dimly lit room, the strange code felt extraordinarily real. Each symbol and digit held the weight of countless stories, of lives lived and lost. The code, a beacon of hope, was a testament to their suffering and their desire to mend the cosmic tear. Emboldened by their progress, John prepared for his next show. As the red on-air sign lit up, he took a deep breath, the metallic taste of anxiety tingling on his tongue. The night was heavy with possibility, the studio humming with static anticipation. As the first call crackled through the airwaves, he felt a flicker of hope. He was no longer just a radio host. He was the bridge between realms, the key bearer to mend the tear, armed with the cipher of souls. John's show was no longer a place for late-night entertainment. It had become a fulcrum in the tilt of cosmic forces, an anchor amidst the swirling spiritual tempest. Each call was an opportunity, a step towards deciphering the cosmic code and mending the tear. John's conversations with the other side took on a new gravity. Margaret's spectral guidance and Rachel's expertise in the paranormal provided a framework to interpret the whispers from the beyond. His once casual banter now felt like a chess game with reality itself. Each move calculated, each response crucial. With every passing night, a pattern within the code became clearer. Each soul's tale was a piece of a larger puzzle, a cosmic tapestry of interconnected stories, lives, and experiences. Their spectral voices were laced with desperation and determination, weaving an ethereal bond that transcended the divide between life and death. The studio had become an echo chamber of these stories. John felt an unspoken bond with his callers, a kinship that transcended the barriers of existence. They were all part of the same struggle, victims and warriors in a cosmic conflict that was far greater than any of them. One particular night, as a hauntingly familiar melody drifted from the radio, a new voice came on the line. "John, it's Benjamin again," the voice stated, with a sense of urgency. "I've been listening, and I think I understand the sequence. It's a formula, a way to mend the tear." The rest of the conversation was a whirl of complex scientific theories, quantum mechanics, and multidimensional physics. Each statement from Benjamin seemed to fit with Margaret's coded message, linking the seemingly disparate parts into a coherent whole. As the realization sank in, John felt a mix of apprehension and hope. The studio, his once familiar haven, buzzed with static energy, the scent of possibility hanging heavy in the air. With the code, the formula, and the spectral allies on the other side, he realized he had become an emissary, a crucial link in the cosmic chain. The challenge was monumental, the stakes astronomical, but the late-night radio host was ready to play his role. Armed with the cryptic cipher and Benjamin's quantum theory, John and Rachel dedicated their waking hours to translating the spectral code into a tangible solution. The studio was shrouded in an intense atmosphere, their fervent discussions and debates permeating the room, blending with the aroma of warm circuitry and cold pizza. The calls from the other side took on a rhythmic pattern, their stories fitting into the grand design. Each phantom voice was a crucial piece, a strand in the cosmic web they were weaving to mend the tear. John's voice, steady and soothing, resonated through the airwaves, each word a beacon of hope for the souls caught in the turmoil. Then, one fateful night, the pieces fell into place. The cipher, Benjamin's theory, the ghostly messages, all converged into a coherent plan. The key was not in some ritual or artifact, but in sound itself. The pattern suggested a harmonic frequency, a celestial chord that, if played through John's radio show, could mend the cosmic tear. The thought of it sent a shiver down John's spine. His show, his voice, the ghostly whispers, all contributing to a symphony that could save both realms. He was more than a radio host now. He was the conduit, the performer of this celestial symphony. The studio was filled with a profound sense of purpose. The aroma of aging electronics mingled with the scent of a fresh script, the anticipation prickling on John's skin. As he went on air that night, the reality of his task seemed to hum through the microphone, resonating in his voice. The fear was undeniable. One wrong move could worsen the tear, unleash chaos onto his town. But the strength in the spectral voices, the trust they placed in him, fueled his resolve. He wasn't alone in this. He had allies, both in this realm and the next. As he announced the plan over the airwaves, a silence fell. The town, the studio, the ethereal voices, all seemed to hold their breath. It was a defining moment, the quiet before the cosmic storm. Tomorrow night, he would broadcast the harmonic frequency, the celestial chord. Tomorrow, he would help mend this tear between our world and the next. As the sun set, painting the town in shades of twilight, a sense of anticipation hovered in the air. John's studio was aglow with dimmed lights, the space pulsating with the undercurrents of the impending broadcast. A symphony of spectral voices filled the air, each caller adding their own note to the cosmic score. John, guided by Margaret's cipher and Benjamin's theory, became the conductor, weaving together their stories and harmonies into a tapestry of sound. The once ordinary radio show had transformed into a celestial stage, the airwaves carrying a tune designed to mend reality. Rachel was at his side, her presence a comforting anchor amidst the swirl of voices. The air was laced with the smell of hot circuits and the subtle aroma of Rachel's calming chamomile tea. The nervous excitement was a taste on their tongues as the countdown to the broadcast began. Finally, the moment arrived. The on-air sign lit up, casting a red glow across the room. John's voice echoed into the night, his words the preamble to the climactic symphony. He explained, once again, the celestial chord's significance and asked his listeners to brace themselves for an experience like no other. Then, with a nod to Rachel and a deep breath, he started the sequence. The harmonic frequency, a cascade of sounds and rhythms, filled the airwaves. It was strange and beautiful, a melody like a lullaby from the cosmos. In his headphones, the spectral voices began to fade, replaced by an ethereal hum, like a sigh of relief from the universe itself. As the celestial chord wove through the night, it was as if the world was holding its breath, caught in the delicate balance between the living and the dead. When the broadcast ended, an uncanny peace fell over the studio. The crackling static that once served as the spectral voices' background was replaced by a calming silence. The sense of the studio, the hot circuits, the chamomile tea, seemed sharper, fresher, like the world was experiencing a renewed sense of reality. In the days that followed, no more phantom calls came. The cosmic tear, it seemed, had been mended. John's show returned to its usual programming, his voice now a comforting constant rather than a bridge between realms. But the memory of haunting voices, of the cosmic symphony, lingered. Life had returned to normal, but John, the late-night radio host, had changed. He was no longer a mere observer of strange tales. He had been a key player in the most extraordinary story of all. His show, Dead Air, continued, now a beacon of hope, a testament to the unity of two realms, and the memory of the spectral voices that once echoed through the night. The harmony had been restored, but the symphony of that night would forever resonate in the heart of the little town. A ghostly lullaby whispering tales of the tear, the code, and the radio host who helped mend reality. And so, dear listeners, we conclude tonight's tale of eerie whispers and cosmic chords. The harmony is restored, but the echo of this chilling symphony still reverberates in the stillness of the night. We hope our tale has made your heart race, your breath hitch, and your mind wander into the eerie realms of dead air. Remember, reality is never as simple as it seems. Be sure to tune in once again for another haunting story on our Scary Stories. Until then, keep your eyes open, your headphones close, and let the darkness guide your imagination. This is our Scary Stories signing off for tonight.